Jobs are temporary. Okay, raises don't keep up, and you're probably going to be replaced by an AI subscription in the following months. Welcome to 2025. People still talk about climbing the career ladder, but in reality, that ladder collapsed a long time ago. Security isn't what it used to be, and the rules of work have changed. And there are 4 reasons why that career ladder is broken, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. Fun times, right? Welcome to Alux. Let's dive in. The myth of job security. So, for the longest time, job security was the most important thing that would set you up to have a good life. It meant stability, pension, healthcare, and a clear path upward. But today, the numbers are telling a very different story. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average time people spent at the same job in 2022 was about 4.1 years. For people between 25 and 34, it was only 2.8 years. As you can see, that's not exactly a lifelong career, but more like a pit stop until the next thing. And it's not exactly the choice of people working there, it's just that nothing is that safe anymore. Even industries once considered safe have lost stability. Pensions have also almost disappeared. Here's a wild statistic for you. A generation ago, the majority of public workers, meaning regular people with regular jobs, benefited from something called a defined benefit pension plan, which basically meant the employer would pay you a set sum of money every year after you retire for the rest of your life. And they paid you out of their own pocket. The calculation was based largely on how long you'd stayed at the company and your salary. So in that case, staying decades at the same job was a pretty good deal because it meant your retirement money was secured. But now, pretty much nobody does that anymore, and instead, you have to rely on a 401k style plan where you set aside money from your own paycheck. So staying decades at the same company, it no longer guarantees you anything beyond loyalty points and framed Employee of the Month posters. The career ladder was built on the promise of stability, but that foundation no longer exists. People spend just a little while on each job. Pensions are pretty much gone, and layoffs are now routine. In 2025 alone, Microsoft fired 9,000 people, around 4% of its workforce. Across the tech sector, more than 63,000 people were laid off in just the first half of the year. We're talking about trillion-dollar companies here, okay? If stability doesn't exist at this level, it doesn't exist anywhere. You see, depending on one paycheck means exposing yourself to a single point of failure. Lose that paycheck, and 100% of your income disappears. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 report on U.S. households' well-being, 37% of adults said they would struggle to cover a $400 emergency expense. That means that millions of people are one email from HR away to immediate financial problems. And the reality is, these people aren't getting fired because they don't perform, but because it's cheaper to hire a lower-paid workforce or straight-up AI to do their job for way cheaper. That is at least what Microsoft did. That's the reality behind the myth of job security. The ladder looks stable, but it's built on sand, okay? And that is really only half the problem. But before we dive into the other half, I just wanted to take a moment to highlight how the Alux app can not only help you level up in your career, but also change careers or even finally start your own business. Inside, we've got daily coaching lessons ranging from finance to intellect and relationships, but also career-specific collections presented by industry experts. Hundreds of thousands of people are already using the app to get them closer to their goals because, to put it simply, it works. Our goal is to help create at least 1,000 new millionaires, and we've already helped to mint a few, and we'd like you to be one of them, okay? So to sweeten this deal, scan that QR code on screen and you'll get 25% off the annual membership. I'll see you on the inside, but in the meantime, let's get back to the other half of this career ladder problem. And that is the trap of linear growth. Now, jobs scale in straight lines. You trade hours for money and maybe once a year you get a raise. And over the years, your income slowly increases in a steady fashion. And that would be all fine and good if the rest of the world kept the same trajectory, but It doesn't. You can compare income growth over the past 40 years versus house prices, and, yeah. That's why the career ladder feels like a treadmill. Each year you climb, your salary inches forward, while everything else sprints ahead. The raise you get doesn't catch up with the rent increase, the medical expenses, mortgage, groceries, all of it. Even when a promotion happens, okay? If your salary rises 3% in a year, but the housing in your city rises 8%, you're still falling behind no matter how hard you work. And this happens because linear growth has a ceiling. A job is capped by how much they're willing to pay you, not by the value you produce. There is no compounding. Someone earning $50,000 back in the year 2000 with steady raises maybe reached $90,000 today. On paper, that looks like progress, right? But when the cost of the average home more than doubles, that progress disappears. And that is the trap of linear growth. It convinces you that each promotion is progress, but the ladder itself is too short. Climb as fast as you want, you'll never reach the top because it doesn't go that far. So, what has been the response to all of this? Enter the rise of the fractional era. Now, there are two problems to be solved here. First of all, the career ladder is too short and doesn't reach anything meaningful. Secondly, at any point in time, you can be pushed down and there's nothing you can do about it. So, a simple solution was found. Ignore the ladder altogether and don't bother climbing it in the first place. We're entering what you could call the fractional era, where people split their skills across multiple employers, clients, and projects at the same time. And what's more interesting is that we're seeing this trend start from the very top. The fractional C-suite has gone mainstream. CFOs, CMOs, CTOs, even CEOs now divide their week between multiple companies. So even if the executives, the winners of the corporate game, don't see loyalty as worth it, then why would anyone else? It also flips the power dynamic, okay? For decades, companies treated workers as disposable. One restructure, one downturn, one layoff notice, and years of loyalty vanished overnight. But now people are returning the favor. Fractional executives treat companies the same way, as clients. A chief marketing officer might work for 4 firms at once. If one ends the contract, they still have the other 3. If one company underpays, they move on. The dependency has flipped. In the fractional era, people are no longer owned by one ladder. They build portfolios, they hold options. Companies are temporary. So why does this work? Well, because businesses want top talent without having to pay them the full salary. A startup might need a CFO 1 day a week. A mid-sized firm might want a marketing guy for one project. A scaling tech company might only need a CTO for a particular launch. And the numbers back this up, okay? Deloitte reports 1 in 5 companies under 500 employees now use fractional executives. Chief Outsiders, which is literally an executives as a service firm, found demand for fractional executives has grown 60% year over year. MBO Partners counts 4.5 million independent professionals in the US earning over 6 figures annually, with many of them being ex-executives now doing fractional work. And you see, the rise of the fractional C-suite is important because it shows that if the highest career ladder has gone fractional, then the ladder itself is gone. Which brings us to the new security. So for most of the 20th century, the definition of security was stability. One employer for life, one pension, one paycheck that you could rely on. That's how your parents and grandparents built their lives. But that world just doesn't exist anymore. Back in the 80s, more than half of regular workers had pensions. Today, it's more like fewer than 15%. Back then, people usually spent 20 to 30 years at the same company. Today, they spend less than 4. Those numbers tell a story, okay? What was once guaranteed stability has collapsed. And here's the hard truth. Stability is no longer security. It's actually fragility. If your entire life depends on one employer, one paycheck, one ladder, you are exposed. It doesn't really take much for the whole structure to collapse. The new security is optionality, the ability to pivot, to draw on more than one support, and to survive even when one piece falls. It sounds ironic at first glance because optionality looks unstable. Multiple roles, multiple things to manage, nothing lasts forever, but that's exactly what makes it strong. In a fragile system, having options is the only form of protection. Stability is the ladder, one way up, one way down. If that ladder breaks, you fail. Optionality is more like scaffolding, many supports, many routes, and if one thing breaks, the whole thing is still standing. Stability is a single paycheck. If it disappears, so does 100% of your income. Optionality is a portfolio of incomes. Even small ones add resilience, and if one stops, it's not the end of the world. Stability is loyalty to a company. Optionality is leverage across clients. You see, optionality doesn't mean chasing 10 hustles and living in chaos. No, it means designing a life so that no single failure can break it down. In a way, it's how entrepreneurs look at life by default. The point is, your parents could survive on stability, but you can't. The definition of security has changed, okay? It's not the job you hold anymore, it is the options you've built. It's not climbing higher on a ladder, it's having more doors you can walk through when one closes. So the question is no longer, how safe is your job? The real question is, if you lose it tomorrow, how many options would you have? Now, the bright side to all of this, if you decide to see it this way, is that having options has always been a good idea. The only difference now is, well, that you're kind of being pushed into it. We hope you learned something valuable here today, Aluxer. We'll catch you back here next time. Until then, take care, my friend.